Welcome back. So, yeah, Pooja, you were saying something that if there is a repeated experience, then why would I not project it for the future, right?
And then why I should start fresh every time?
Yes, because every time is fresh. Actually, every time is fresh, and there is no repeat can be possible. Even if we are take doing the same action, for example, this particular session, it's a mechanical repetition of launching Zoom and creating a session and then joining it. But if you minutely look at, then you'll find that every time you do it, there is some difference that is happening. It cannot be mapped. No two occurrences can be mapped and claimed that these two are indifferent. Can it be? Can
No,
it be,
sir.
ma'am?
No.
So there is uniqueness of every moment, which we fail to look at with the imagination of repetition. Repetition is not natural and do not happen. Repetitions do not happen. It's just our imagination that the things are repeated. So there are changes for sure in its progression, and we fail to see that dynamic changes with the influence of that imagery fixation. Yeah. So any other question or concern or reflection? If you have, then we can go into it. Otherwise, we'll proceed with the next topic.
सर मैं पूछूं
हाँ
ज्योति
जी, हाँ जी ज्योति, प्लीज मैम।
सर अभी ये स्लैब का एग्जाम्पल लिया वैसे और एक एग्जाम्पल मतलब मुझे ये पूछना था
हाँ बताइए।
ये चिल्ड्रन से रिलेटेड जो प्रॉब्लम्स रहते हैं उसको कैसा कंसिडर करें मतलब सर उनको समझा या नहीं समझा या क्या करें
कौन सा? चिल्ड्रन रिलेटेड?
या तो उनको नॉलेज कैसे दें किस एंगल से इसको कैसे ये
नॉलेज तो
करें
हम दे ही नहीं सकते हैं, दैट्स अ फैक्ट।
तो क्या करें मतलब
हम खुद समझे ना, और साथ में समझें, ये भी हो सकता है। हमें
मतलब
खुद को ही समझ नहीं है चीजों का, और हम जा रहे हैं सिखाने, और सिखाना पॉसिबल नहीं है, ये फैक्ट को भी नहीं देख रहे हैं। तो अगर अगर ये समझ आ जाए एट द फर्स्ट प्लेस, जे हमें ही बहुत समझना है अभी, सेम चीज जो हमें लग रहा है जो हम समझ चुके हैं, एक्चुअली हम समझे नहीं है, अभी बहुत बाकी है समझना। ये फैक्ट को जब हम देखने लगेंगे, तो हम साथ में बैठ जाएंगे चिल्ड्रन के साथ, और हो सकता है वो हमें बहुत सिखा के जाए। तो
हाँ सर वो भी तो सीखते हैं हमें
हम तो बहुत कुछ सीखते हैं ना। तो तो पहले तो ये सिखाने की जो मनसा है, ये बड़ा एक बोझ है। जो पॉसिबल नहीं है, उस
हाँ
पॉसिबिलिटी को हम इमेजिन करते रहते हैं, जो ये हम कर देंगे, हम किसी को कुछ सिखा देंगे। ये कभी भी पॉसिबल नहीं होता है कि किसी को आप कुछ सिखा दो। वो अगर सीख जाए तो फिर सीख सकता है, हो सकता है आपसे ही सीख ले, बट आप सिखाओगे ये पॉसिबल नहीं है। आप समझ पा रहे हो ये बात? और अगर कोई सीखने पे आ जाए, तो उसके लिए आपका जरूरत भी नहीं है, वो सीख ही जाएगा। वो अपना जुगाड़ कर लेगा, कैसे वो सीखेगा। ये
मतलब हर एक
फैक्ट।
का टाइम आता है।
हाँ, हर एक चीज का टाइम है, और वो स्ट्रक्चरली चलता है, डिजाइन किया हुआ है, ऑलरेडी डिजाइंड है। किसी ने बैठ के डिजाइन बनाया ऐसा नहीं है, इवॉल्व है नेचर में। ये डिजाइन तो इवॉल्व है, और डिजाइन के मुताबिक ही फंक्शन होता है।
मतलब जो भी हो रहा है वो बस देखते रहो।
देखते रहो का मतलब ये नहीं है जब कुछ ना करो, पर कुछ करने का प्लानिंग जब हम कर रहे हैं तो हम एक इमेजिनरी वर्ल्ड में जा रहे हैं। पर बिना एक्शन का लाइफ नहीं हो सकता है। इफ वी आर अलाइव, देन एक्शन इज अ फैक्चुअल progression of life, because if there is an energy, then there will be definitely action. एक्शन के बिना एनर्जी नहीं रह सकता। एनर्जी को आप आइडल नहीं रख सकते हो, एनर्जी को रोक के नहीं रख सकते हो, जो आप एक्शन में नहीं ले सकते हो। तो सिर्फ देखना है जब आप बोल रहे हो। अगर आप ये कहना चाह रहे हो जो बिना एक्शन का मुझे देखते ही रहना है, ऐसा ऐसा हमें पता नहीं है क्या एक्शन उस समय होने वाला है। आप पहले से अगर डिसाइड करके जा रहे हो जो मुझे फलाना एक्शन लेना ही है, वहां पर हम इमेजिनरी एक वर्ल्ड तैयार कर रहे हैं। ये समझ पा रहे हैं? हम्म। तो देर इज
तो
नो
बस
प्रपोजल
मतलब,
ऑफ नॉन एक्शन।
अच्छा मतलब बस करते रहो, एक्शन लेते रहो, पता नहीं।
हाँ, उस मोमेंट में क्या एक्शन आएगा आप अभी से कैसे डिसाइड कर सकते हो? उसी मोमेंट का इंटेलिजेंस में ये निकल के आ जाएगा, उपज के आएगा, इवॉल्व करेगा, इमर्ज होगा।
ओके।
वो अगर हम पहले से डिसाइड करके रख रहे हैं, तो फिर तो उसका बेसिस क्या हो जाएगा? उसका बेसिस एक इमेजिनेशन है ना। हम कुछ कंसिडर करके
हम्म।
रख रहे हैं, और उसके बेसिस पे एक्शन को पहले से तैयार करके रख रहे हैं, और हमें पता ही नहीं है एक्चुअली क्या होने वाला है उस मोमेंट में। तो ये तो सरासर
नहीं पता है।
फुलिशनेस है ना। राइट।
ओके सर।
यस मैम।
थैंक
कल्याण जी, आप जब सीखने सिखाने की बात कर रहे थे तो
हाँ जी।
एक बच्चा कैसे सीखता है?
बच्चा सीखता
वो
ही है।
क्या?
बच्चा सिर्फ बच्चा नहीं, हम भी सीखते हैं, हर एक मोमेंट में
हम भी
सीखते
सीखते
ही हैं हम।
हैं। हाँ, सो
हर
व्हाट
एक
आई एम
मोमेंट।
आस्किंग कि जो अपब्रिंगिंग जिसको कहते हैं,
हाँ।
तो वो तो आप उसके दिमाग में जाके नहीं डाल सकते। आपने जो बात कही मुझे बड़ी हंसी आ रही थी कि जिसने जब जो सीखना होता है वो अपने आप सीखता है, आप सिखा नहीं सकते।
हम्म।
तो ये जो हम लोग पूरी तड़जोड़ में लगे रहते हैं कि बच्चों को ये सिखाना है, बच्चों को वो सिखाना है,
ये
या
इंसानी
मैंने
फितरत है,
बच्चे को
और
ये
कुछ नहीं
सिखाना
है। ये
है।
इंसानी
आई
फितरत है।
फॉर माई पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस, हमारी फितरत है।
हम्म।
बट मैं ये जानना चाहती हूँ कि जब बच्चा पैदा होता है और वो जो बड़ा होता है, तो
हम्म।
वो जो कुछ सीखता है वो अपनी एनवायरनमेंट को ऑब्जर्व करके, तो वो बात तो वही हुई ना कि वो सेंसरी परसेप्शन, सेंसरी इनपुट जो आता है और उसके हिसाब से वो कैसे परसीव करता है, दैट इज हाउ द लर्निंग हैपेंस, राइट?
यस, यस, यस। एंड दैट्स द रियल लर्निंग।
दैट्स द रियल लर्निंग।
Yeah, if we are trying to condition the learning through some arrangement, through some facilitation,
और इनपुट्स।
yeah, through some inputs, it's actually not happening. We are
सो व्हाट
just
इज
giving
एजुकेशन देन?
us education. If we try and understand the learning, then it doesn't need any system. If it is
एग्जैक्टली।
systemized, then something else is happening, not learning.
ओके।
Yeah, if it is systematically arranged, if the education is systematically arranged, then we may end up creating some clerks, which was the basis of creating of this education system. It's a Victorian model that we are following. All over the world is following that. It's actually war requirement. Do you not know that? The education system
या
that we see around.
या
Yes.
I
So,
have deeply researched that, and we are working on them. My
yes.
daughter is unschooled,
Yeah. Yeah.
so homeschooling and unschooled. But
Yes.
what I'm trying to understand is when the child observes parents or the environment. So it's the child, that organism's own learning, rather than this whole foolish ideas that we have that we've taught the child,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
This impression that we parents carry
Yeah,
that this
before
is
you
how
joined,
a
actually, there was a question that how can
Anji.
we teach children
Right.
now?
Okay. Sorry, I
Now,
missed that.
yeah. So now, that's a very imaginary question, hypothetical question, because who are we to teach? Number one, and
Hmm.
have we understood that we are going to make them understand?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have not understood yet. We are in a
Right.
journey of understanding. So how can we impose our understanding onto someone which is incomplete in nature?
Hmm.
So all these questions, if we ask ourselves, then a lot of things get revealed. And with that revelation, perhaps some alignment with the truth can happen, may happen.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Right. So these are few categories to actually, these are repeating, we are perhaps repeating the same things, but to have a clarity of action, sensation, and perception, we have categorized these things. The primary action is the real action, which comes as a byproduct of perception. And similarly, primary sensation is coming from the action, and primary perception, which comes from the sensation. Primary action, which is natural order, P3, P1, P3 to P1. Action emerged naturally or from dynamic inquisitive perception. So action emerged naturally at the first place when there is no perception formed, but some sort of experience, sensory experience happens. That is what is the natural action. And after that, the perception takes over. Dynamically, perception brings a change in the pattern of action. Now, secondary action is the action which is planned out due to some ideated sensations. So it is coming from P2 to P1. Now, primary sensations are the sensations which are coming really from the senses, really from the action, P1 to P2. Sensations from primary actions, which ends by itself. This is very important to understand. This particular sensation, which is real, primary, genuine, it ends by itself because the source has got an end. When the source is ending, then definitely the impact also ends. And then comes the secondary sensation. Secondary sensation is that source from the P3. So sensations from ideas, concluded perception or stagnated perception, as you term that, which doesn't end by itself unless inquired. When we inquire it, when we question, then it ends, then it drops. Otherwise, it never ends. It keeps on repeating. The impact may be confused as it got ended, but the framework is already adopted by us. Primary perception is always from the primary sensation. Primary sensation means the sensation which is coming from the senses. So perceptions from primary sensations, which is never concluded. This is very important. Now, this particular aspect, that the perceptions are not concluded, gives newer action at place. And that is what is looking at the moment as fresh as it is. Secondary perception are the perception which comes from the action. So when we keep on justifying our action, and the justification lead us to pride or remorse. When we justify our action or give excuses, in justification, most of the cases, there is a pride of the action. And then in the excuses, there are remorses underlying in the action. And in both the cases, the imaginary I is operating. Now we are trying to connecting the understanding of nature cure with this energy depletion. We understood somewhat about the energy depleting loops in the psychological sphere. And let's see the kind of impact that, yes, Jyotiji, please.
So in short, can you tell how to understand I?
Can you repeat? Fail to comprehend.
In short, can you please explain how to understand I?
I.
I.
Yes, I. So this existence of the physical existence that we have, that we name I mostly, that this is I want that. So now whenever we mention or try to speak about this existence as I, what operates are the desires, are the choices. Whenever we talk about I, there are associated choices that we speak about. If you look deeply, then you see that we never speak about I if there is no choices. So these two things are very closely related, the choices and the I. If there are choices, then there is an I. So in that way, I is a container, imaginary container, which contains choices which are again imaginary. Because our choices and opinions do not have any value. Do not have any value in respect to the truth. Truth actually operates without any control, without any opinion. If it starts operating under the influence of opinions, then it's no more truth. So I is that imaginary container which contains choices. Are you able to comprehend, ma'am, this?
Yes, yes.
Or you're not comfortable with this? Like, what should I call this particular existence? If not I.
Any example? With example?
With example?
Yeah.
Not sure about the examples. Yeah, Anita, you want to share something? Reflect?
No, that's fine.
Okay. So I'm not sure about the example on this. Binal, would you like to reflect some example in case?
I was also thinking of I in the context of having a very strong, concretized, reactive memory of either the past or the future. So, this bundle of imagination and assumption that we have concluded as so true. So it colors the vision for seeing the current moment as is. So this is another maybe way of looking at the same. One was through the choices, and this is through like and choices are generally in the form of imagination and assumption, so past and future.
Yeah, so choices actually pertains to the either past or the future. Yes, yes.
I think it's difficult to accept the fact that what we look like, our appearance is I. So we are so attached to this I, uh, that digesting this fact and trying to kind of detach, I would say, from the physical appearance to the actual I is the conflict somewhere.
The beauty of inquiry here at this point, the kind of scenario that you are explaining, is that we have an option to look at this fact also that we are not able to digest. Do you see that?
Right. Yeah.
When we see that we are not able to digest, and we try and inquire what is the foundation of this not able to digest, when the some facts are factually available, then what is the uncomfortable sensation that I am sensing, and what is the reason for that? So there are layers actually. Because of that same framework, adoption of the framework, we keep on creating layers, and different layers are operating actually. And the beauty of it, that we need not to pinpoint every single layers. We just see the framework, see the imagination, and all the layers are dropped together. Instantly it drops. It doesn't need any duration, any practice, any method to get dropped. It drops by itself. The moment we start recognizing the imaginations, a single imagination, if it is recognized clearly, the moment we do that, all the associated imaginations are dropped. It cannot stay, because the imagination stays only under the condition of considering it as truth. Otherwise, we are never driven by imagination. We cannot be driven by the imagination unless we consider that imagination as truth. So the moment we see the fact of imagination, which is that it is imagination, it is not the truth. The moment we see that, it gets dropped. It cannot stick around. It's a very beautiful journey that way.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
So yeah, impacts of conflicts, and here some sort of correlations of nature cure understanding, natural hygiene understanding, we can establish. So what happens basically in the unnatural order, or the conflicting order as we are terming it? So there are efforts in action. In nature, the actions are effortless. Actions like the breathing. Breathing, we never consider that it is an effort. And it is the most rational action that we continuously take up. So it is basically effortless. So natural action or rational actions are effortless. But whenever it is happening in the conflicting order, there are efforts needed in action. And there are repetition of sensation, because as we understand the P3P2 loop, the sensations are repeated. Endlessly it is repeated unless inquired as a framework. So there is an overloaded sensation. Otherwise, naturally, the sensations are very minimal. It is a guiding factor of life. It is just balancing the energy conservation. if it is naturally occurring. If we are operated physically, then the sensations are very much minimal. It is not repeating, infinitely looping. All those things are not there. It has a concrete end because of the source having end. Now, the perceptions are also becoming irrational because we start justifying our actions and we start owning the action, and it brings associated pride and remorse. So the perceptions are always engaged. It chatters. It repeats the thing. It starts justifying the things which are utterly unnatural. Walking on the fire are justified. So there are layers of perceptions keep on coming, considering something as success, considering success as an important event in life. All these stories, we keep on feeding stories to ourselves and believing on those all stories. Whereas in nature, these are unneeded. These are irrelevant. So when we add up the efforts that are put in action and due to the overloaded sensation and irrational perceptions, what we end up is huge depletion of energy. It's a state of depleted energy, which actually compromise a lot of regular activities or capabilities of an organism. And this is called innervation. In nature cure science, this particular state of depleted energy is termed as innervation. Now, this particular innervation basically leads to reduction in elimination. This is very interesting thing. Now, see, any organism operates in a regular sequence of input, processing, and output. Input, processing, and output. Now, input is something which is continuously happening. It's a natural phenomena. The input from the external world is continuously happening. And we are continuing with that in different forms. Now, since the input is there, processing also is happening optimally somewhat. Now, ultimately, the third activity, which is output, that output gets hampered. And output is basically throwing out the toxin from the body, which happens in 4 channels. The first and the foremost is the urine through the kidneys that happen. Kidneys keep on filtering blood and throwing out the toxin through the urine. And then comes the breathing out. Now, breathing out is also as major as urine. It's a continuous process of throwing out the toxic, filtered toxins out of the body. So blood keeps on getting filtered through the lungs. And finally, the third eliminating organ is the skin, the largest eliminating organ. Through perspiration, again, the blood gets filtered and the toxins are thrown out. And the fourth channel is the stool. Stool is not out of the purification of blood, but it's actually the external toxin that we throw out through the food, whatever we collect, whatever is assimilated, leftover is thrown out as stool. That's also a definitely toxin. But the primary impact goes on the urine, breathe out, and the perspiration. And there is a reduction in those outputs because of the lack of energy, because of an innervated state, in a state of depleted energy, those activities are compromised. And the compromising of those activities are largely unnoticed, because the body is structured to adjust with it optimally. So we compromise the output, but we do not notice instantly. It's because of the innervation we lead ourselves to this reduced elimination. And reduction in elimination or the output leads us to a state which is called toxemia, because of the accumulated toxin within the body. Because output and elimination is basically throwing out the toxin. When we don't throw out the toxin, we start accumulating it within the body. And that leads us to a state called toxemia. And toxemia is something which is in nature cure considered as the single cause of all the diseases, because all the diseases are having the first stage as toxemia at the physical level. So it starts with the innervation, leads to the toxemia, and toxemia leads to the different symptomatic manifestation. And when the body undergoes a state called toxemia, the body again responds back naturally to counter the state of toxemia. And that countering is called healing crisis, which actually opens up some special eliminating channels, because the normal eliminations have been compromised. Now, to compensate that, naturally, it is a structured function within the body to open up the special elimination. And those special eliminations are primarily fever. Alongside, there are flus, loose motion, severe pain, all these symptoms come in. So it's basically raising the temperature of the body. And by raising the temperature of the body, there is a reduction in the density of the toxins, which are facilitated to get eliminated further. So by reducing the density of the toxins, the body actually throws out the toxins outside the body effectively. So it's actually very simple to understand that how the heat is increased within the body. It's a simple understanding of heat and the crowd. If the crowd is lesser, then the heat is lesser. If the crowd is increasing, then the heat is also increasing. Ultimately, it could go any level. So whenever there is toxin getting accumulated within the body, getting further accumulated within the body, because whenever there is toxin, the body actually uses energy little more for that possessed toxin, and that leads the body to innervate it further, and that innervation leads to the toxemia further, and it becomes a vicious cycle within, the similar kind of loop of innervation and toxemia. So the level of toxin goes up on its own if it is retained within the body. And the moment it goes up, there is a heat generation within the body. It's a beautiful structure, design structure. And it is, so beautiful is an adjective though, but it is designated that way for very existential purpose. Otherwise, there is no meaning of existing the existence. The existence is existing because it has got this structured aspect of reversing back the state of balance. So the state of toxemia is a loss of balance. Now, healing crisis is a process through which the balance is restored back. But conventionally, how the heat is handled, that's the question. We end up suppressing the heat. Because during the during the healing crisis, we have the indication from the body of taking rest. Taking rest means supporting the conservation of energy so that the conserved energy can be used in the process of spatial elimination. But if we deny that,
Sir,
yes,
every type of fever is elimination process,
yes.
whether it is bacterial, viral or anything.
Yeah, so those are the byproduct or effect of toxemic state and healing crisis. The infection or whatsoever you call it.
So, sir, like in the tuberculosis or in viral infection, the fever, body generate heat. At that point of time, we need the external innervation now to heal that, like tuberculosis. For that, we need external innervation.
Yes, so let's explore that. This is a very interesting question. This needs further exploration. Let's explore that what are this infected state of health, right?
Okay,
So
sir.
let's rejoin in 5 minutes time. Going to end now this session. So I request all of you to reflect the points that are being discussed so that we can inquire together in the next session further. Thank you. We'll launch the session after 5 minutes again.